Hi, my name is Austin Warner, and I spent my summer as an intern at Radnor Studio 21. I was given the opportunity to film and produce my own story, and in doing so, chose to take a look at the Great Cycle Challenge USA and one of their cyclists, Mike McIntyre. I gravitated toward the story due to the importance of the cause itself and to get a rider's perspective. Great Cycle Challenge is a month-long event to fundraise for children's cancer research. I take a look into the riders and the cause as a whole. Here it is. How are you, Mike?
I'm fine.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Well, I'm the president and COO of Academy One. We're a software development company. We focus primarily on the higher education space, helping students with the mobility of academic credit. About a third of students transfer from one institution to another. And when they do that, we want to make sure that they take as much credit as they possibly can, because if they lose a lot of credit, they end up spending more time in college, cost them more money. Parents don't really like to do that. They also use up their financial aid. And what we have found is that some students will transfer, use up all their financial aid and never graduate. And that's really something that we're trying to avoid.
So we're here to talk about the Great Cycle Challenge, but I just want to know, how long have you been riding for, cycling?
Well, when I was your age and in college or just out of college, I rode a bike quite a bit. And then life got in the way. And I ended up not riding until about 6 years ago. And I started riding again because as a Radnor resident, you are allowed to go to the Villanova University gym. Mm-hmm. And they have a program called the Friends of Villanova. And while I was at the gym, I happened to meet a guy named Dick Brandt. And Dick Brandt was a Villanova resident at the time, living in Radnor. And he liked riding. And he sort of encouraged me to get back into riding. And that's how I did. So that was about 6 years ago.
So how did you get introduced to the Great Cycle Challenge?
Well, I'm one of those kind of people that once you get into something, you do it pretty heavy. Mm-hmm. And so I started riding a lot. And besides just riding for exercise sake, I really wanted to put some purpose behind it. Mm-hmm. And so I started to do some charity rides. And I did charity rides for the homeless. I did charity rides for Cancer Society, for a whole bunch of different organizations. And one day I was online and I saw that there's this new event was starting called the Great Cycle Challenge. And when I looked it up, it was for childhood cancer. And I thought that would be a good thing to ride for. And it was a little different than most of the other rides that I was doing. And the way that it was different was this. Most of those charity rides are one-day events. You sign up, you raise some money, you do the ride, and it's over. Sometimes they're 2 days, but most of the time they're just one day. This particular ride was for the whole month of June. So what you could do is you didn't have a specific path that you took. You simply said, I'm going to ride X number of miles, and I'm going to try to raise X amount of money. There was no entrance fee. And that first year, I said I was going to ride a few hundred miles, and I was going to try to raise a couple $100. And I did, and I felt really good about it. And during that event, I happened to mention it to Dick Brandt, the person I had met at Villanova. Mm-hmm. And Dick, at that point in time, told me about his daughter. And his daughter had contracted a form of cancer, brain cancer, that was really prevalent in children and in young adults. She was at Colgate University as a freshman when she was diagnosed with it. And she fought it for 10 years. And it's a type of cancer, brain cancer, for this particular type of children's brain cancer. It has a high occurrence rate. So once you beat it, it comes back. You beat it, it comes back. It's really a dreadful disease. She had 5 brain operations in those 10 years. Because it was sort of a childhood type cancer, she transferred from Colgate University to the University of Pennsylvania so that she could be very near to Children's Hospital, where she would get her therapy and her chemotherapy and her radiation therapy, and where some of the operations took place. So when I found that out about Dick, I said, okay, geez, this is sort of like the universe putting me in the right spot at the right time. I mean, I'm trying to do this to raise money for children's cancer. And here, one of my good friends lost a daughter to children's cancer. So I said, this is something I'm going to do over time. I'm not just going to make it a one-shot deal. So I've been doing it now. This is my 5th year doing that event.
So piggybacking on that, you talk about your spirit rides. Can you explain that?
Well, I started spirit rides last year in the event, and the spirit rides are, I mean, when somebody goes through cancer, it's terrible, and it's terrible for them, and it's terrible for their family. It's just an all-round horrendous disease. And I know that because my father-in-law had liver cancer, and I watched him just wither away. He did everything he possibly could to beat it. He died when he was in his 50s. I'm 68 years old now, so I've lived a lot longer, than he had already. And he was a very good person. And I sort of got this sense that, I'd like to do this not just for kids, but for other people who have had cancer as well. And so I decided I would take a picture of Mr. Kelly, that was his name, Thomas Kelly, with me on one of my rides as a riding partner. And so I was doing it in his honor for his spirit. And I did that last year, or I did that a couple years ago. And then last year I decided to do it for other people who were fighting cancer themselves. And so I would post on social media that I was doing this, and if anybody had a person that they'd like me to do a ride for, to let me know. And so I started doing spirit rides for people who were fighting cancer or who had lost their battle with cancer. This year, however, I have had so many people who have said, my daughter's lost her fight with cancer, my son's lost his fight with cancer, my father lost his fight with cancer, that the event is, as I said, a month long, so that's 30 days. And so I wanted to do 30 spirit rides, one for each of those days. Now, obviously, the weather gets in the way sometimes, and so what the Great Cycle Challenge does is it rolls into July and allows you to do those rides or do whatever rides you want to do in July as well. So I think I did 24 rides in June. But you know what? I've got a schedule of those. I don't know if you can see that, but that's each day it shows them. It shows who I've ridden for, and you can see the very first ride that I did on June 1st was for my father-in-law, Thomas Kelly. The person that I talked to about before, Katie Brandt, Dick's, she was down around the 22nd, I believe.
Yep.
And the other thing, these spirit rides, these are all of the pictures, of people who have been with me, on my spirit ride. I take them and I put them in my back pocket. Sometimes I do it for just an individual, like this is Katie Brandt. She had a sort of a professional picture taken of herself when she still had hair, because she knew that as soon as she started taking chemotherapy, she was going to lose it all. And so she had that picture taken. So you can see how many different, individuals there are here that, I've ridden for. And on the spirit ride, the way that it starts is I take the picture and I say, hey, Katie, how you doing? I said, we're going to go for a little ride today. I'm so glad that you're with me. So I hope you enjoy it. So I take her picture, have a little conversation with her, and then I put it in my back jersey pocket, and away we go. Now, during the course of the ride, I will sometimes have a conversation with them. I'm not crazy, but here's an example. I have BJ in my back pocket, Bernard Joseph, and he is the he is the brother of my sister-in-law, and he lost his fight with cancer when he was in his 40s, and he had 4 kids. And I said, BJ, we're going for a ride. I didn't think anything else about it. And then there was a really big headwind. And if you ever ride a bike, it's great when you have the wind behind you, but when the wind is in front of you, it really tends to slow you down. Yep. And at the same time that I was riding into this headwind, I was going up a hill, which made it doubly hard. And so I said, hey BJ, if you're back there with me, can you help me out? And the minute I said that, or the second I said that, it felt as if somebody was pushing me up the hill. And then when I got to the top of the hill, I just happened to say, BJ, thanks a lot. And as soon as I said thanks a lot, it stopped. So is that coincidence? Is it my mind? Is it, some connection with BJ? I have those connections periodically with different people. I don't know why it happens at some points in time. It just was a very odd thing. So I love doing the spirit rides. They are emotional, and it does make me feel like there's a purpose to my riding. So that's something about the spirit rides.
You talked about your goal for this challenge was 500 miles. Can you tell us about how much you actually have accomplished at this point?
Well, as of today, I'm about 650 miles. So I've exceeded that goal. But that's not the important thing.
Right.
The important thing is really raising funds for the cancer, for the Children's Cancer Research Fund.
And how much have you?
Well, as of this morning, I'm now over $9,000. And the fundraising ends the end of next week.
And you have support from donations all around the world. How does it feel to have to know so many people are invested in the research for these cancers?
I don't know how much you keep up with current events, but we're a pretty polarized country right now. Right. There's the hard right, there's the hard left, and what's been reassuring and heartening to me is the way that people from all across the country have been able to come together and support this event by generously donating to my riding. And I've been able to raise the $9,000 some odd $100 so far, and those donations have come from Maine down to Florida, Texas, Utah, out to California. I think right now there's 18 different states where people reside that have donated to it. And in addition to that, I've had people from France, England, Canada, and Singapore this year donate as well. So it's just not something that's happening in the U.S. I'm very grateful to the generous donations that have come in from all around the globe. I might add that the Great Cycle Challenge, it's the Great Cycle Challenge USA. There's also the Great Cycle Challenge Canada, and there's also the Great Cycle Challenge Australia. So this is not just a event that takes place here in the States, but it takes place in other countries around the globe as well.
And I know we are actually going on a ride with some of your buddies from GCC later on today. How does it feel to know you're with a group of people who are with the same cause as you and want to?
All right, I like that question, Austin. Right, it's wonderful. That's the nice thing about these charity rides is that you're with a group of people who share the same passion and desire that you have to try to make a difference in this world, regardless of what the cause is. So whenever you can do that collectively, it feels a lot stronger, and you develop a strength, an eternal strength within one another, and it's a great way to support one another. So if somebody's getting tired, hey, come on, we can do this. If somebody is getting a little discouraged because they aren't getting the donations that they thought they might get, you're there to provide some support for them. And they have always, provided great support for me as well.
So the GCC is only getting bigger and bigger by the years, being one of the biggest cycling events in the country, raising $16 million from all the riders. Where do you see GCC's impact going in the years to come?
Well, I know we'll be talking to Chloe from the GCC in a few minutes, but here's what I guess because I've been involved in it since day one, and I have been somewhat successful in raising funds for them. I got a call from the CEO of the Children's Cancer Research Fund, and he called just to say, "Hey, thanks, Mike, for doing this, raising funds for us." But I said, "Hey, while I've got you on the phone, I've got a few questions, right?" So as a business executive myself, talking to another business executive, I had some questions that were more from a business perspective. One of the things is like, what's the ROI? What's the return on the investment? I'm out here raising money for you. I'm giving you this money. Now, what is this money doing? And typically an ROI is I'll put $100 into something, and if I get $150 back, that's a good ROI. If I get $1,000 back, that's a really great ROI. So I asked him, I said, I've read in a newspaper article that the ROI for the Children's Cancer Research Fund is somewhere between 10 and 15 to 1. I said, that's a pretty good ROI. So if we can raise $1 million, you can turn that into 15 or 16 or 10 to $15 million. How do you do that? And he said, Mike, I don't know what your business is, but we're like a venture capital firm. And what we do is we provide seed money. And we provide seed money to promising researchers that are working on something that we think would have great impact on children's cancer. And we give them money in order to continue that research, because right now only 4% of all money that goes to cancer research is given to researchers trying to find a cure for children's cancer. Only 4%. And so it's very hard for them to get federal funding in order to continue unless they can prove that what they've done has a strong opportunity for success. So we provide them with that seed money, that money to get to that point where they can say, hey, look, I've done something that is successful and looks like it's very promising. Can I now get the federal funds? So when our money is not nearly as much as the federal funds money. So if we give $100,000 to a researcher and he in turn ends up getting a $3 million grant from the federal government, now look at that return on that investment. We put in $100,000, he's getting $3 million. That's much bigger than 10 to 1. But that's an example. I said, well, that's great. I said, as a business person, we look for venture capital sometimes ourselves, so I can see exactly what you're talking about. Now, can you give me a recent success, that when I'm talking to other people, I can say, hey, look, here's an example of what's happened. He says, well, cancer research takes a really long time for a drug or for a procedure to be proven, both first in theoretically and then in animals and then in humans and then finally getting approval. So it takes years and years and years. And, we've been in this business for a while, and let me tell you about the one that's most recent right now. And that is for brain cancer. And it was like, boom, 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 brain cancer. Here's Katie, who died of brain cancer. All right, tell me a little bit more about it. And he says it's a vaccine for brain cancer. And I said, a vaccine? I said, I'm going to go out and take a shot or something to get a vaccine so I don't get brain cancer? And he goes, no. He says, it's a vaccine because brain cancer, particularly in children, just as we saw in Katie's case, returns and returns and returns. And what this vaccine does is that once the person has a brain cancer, it reduces the likelihood of it reoccurring. So if that vaccine would have been around when Katie had her brain cancer, it wouldn't have reoccurred, 5 times. So that really resonated, with me as well. So that's a good example. I think that was, it was really relevant to me, but I think it's also a very good example of how they're using that money I give them $1 and they turn it into something much more than $1. And I said, okay, well, my next question was, well, where do you do this at? It's you're based in Minnesota. I know that you've been working initially with the University of Minnesota's cancer area or research area. And he goes, so no, well, that was a long time ago, Mike. We've branched out a lot more now, and we are part of the COG. I said, you're throwing an acronym at me. What's the COG? It says the COG is the Children's Oncological Group. And what it is, it's a group of organizations that are all dedicated to the research or treatment of children's cancer. And in your area, Mike, Children's Hospital in Philadelphia is one of those hospitals that is part of the COG. So that sounded, to me, that was another thing that now resonated, because Katie, where did she get her treatment? She got her treatment at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. So it just seemed like there were a lot of things that were sort of coming and meshing together that made me feel good about, I felt good already, but it made me feel better, about this organization that I was raising money for.
It's a perfect segue into how can someone donate to this cause, to the GCC or to the CCRF?
Well, there are websites,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a website that you could go to do that. Do you want me to give you the website? It's kind of a long, a long thing, but it's maybe it's something you can put as a graphic,
Mm-hmm.
up there, so I can give that to you. But it's thegreatcyclechallenge.com/writers/Michael A. McIntyre, or they could just do it directly through the the GCC itself. And then obviously the writers who you're going to meet later on, all have the same type of pages as well. So it's there's lots of different ways. And if they just want to look up Great Cycle Challenge, they would easily see or find the site.
Thank you so much for your time, Mike.
Come on, Chloe.
Chloe Walbrook.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you guys do over at the Children's Cancer Research Fund?
Yeah, so Children's Cancer Research Fund was founded in 1981, and we are a national nonprofit that has contributed over $170 million to childhood cancer research, education, and awareness to institutions across the country.
How important is fundraising for the research going into childhood cancer?
It's very important. Currently, there are only 4% of federal funding for cancer research going to childhood cancer research. So Children's Cancer Research Fund works to fill in the gaps where the federal funding isn't.
What will the donations received be going toward?
Yeah, so it goes to research, education and awareness, and family support programs. We, with money from Great Cycle Challenge, support emerging scientist grants. So these are seed grants, which for the childhood cancer research, like I mentioned, they don't get the federal funding so much. So we really help to kind of keep the research going forward and help researchers that may not have the experience get the funding that they need to start their projects.
What has the GCC meant for the fund?
It's been incredible for us. It's really taken us from being a local organization in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to a national organization. So now we have donors and fundraisers in all 50 states, as opposed to just here in Minneapolis. But yeah, over 5 years, we have raised over $23 million through Great Cycle Challenge. So it's been huge for our organization.
If someone were to want to donate to the Children's Cancer Research Fund, how would they go about doing that?
They can donate at childrenscancer.org, or if they want to donate to the Great Cycle Challenge event, it's greatcyclechallenge.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chloe.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Rick Sneed. I live over in Phoenixville.
My name is Arit Minasyan. I live in Broomall. I work with computers IT.
My name's Kathy. I live in Glenmore and I work at Treptan.
My name's Dick Brandt. I live in the area here. I work down at Temple. I'm a professor in the business school.
My name is Stephen Mincer, and I currently work with Mike McIntyre.
How did you get introduced to the Great Cycle Challenge, and how long have you been a part of it?
This year is my first year, and something came across my Instagram account, and it intrigued me, and one thing led to another. Good way to be in shape and help a good cause.
This is my first year. I saw an ad by the Cycle Challenge, and I saw this was a good opportunity to challenge myself, as well as a good cause to take care of cancer, to fight cancer, actually.
This is my third year. I was looking for something to do when I just got back into biking about 3 years ago, and I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I'm glad I have.
What brings you out here riding today?
What brings me out riding here today? Well, to be part of this recognition that you all have organized with Mike to recognize all the good work and the funds that have been raised by the Great Cycle Challenge. So it's an honor to be out here, and I'm glad to be here.
Actually, it was Mike himself. He started working for us back about 7 years ago, and about a year into it, he got me into riding. I've ridden since I was a little kid. I got back into it, and then once I started feeling it out, I got really involved, and he started showing me that there's a lot more to just bike riding as enjoyment, and that's how I got involved with him doing these rides.
How does being out here with a group of friends biking for cancer research make you feel?
It feels great. It's nice when you see other similar shirts ride by. The encouragement, we have a website that everyone encourages everyone, and you post your miles and money that you've raised.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Nice being out with other people. When you're out alone, it's pretty too, but it's just nice to be with a group.
It was great. It was interesting when I first started. It was by myself, but when I started seeing the shirts come by, I felt like I was part of a big team, and it was wonderful.
For those out there who don't know how crucial fundraising is for research, can you tell us a little bit about how important it is to help the cause to fight cancer?
It's so important. First, he got me introduced to Bike MS, which is, riding for MS. It's all around the country. That's where we do, I think we bike 100 miles from Philadelphia all the way to Ocean City. It's just so important. It really helps to fundraise. It helps get people involved in all the big major events going on, and shows you truly just how important, we need to treat it as a serious thing.
Yeah, I can tell you. I have a lot of personal involvement in this, and it's very important that we begin to figure out some kind of a cure for particularly cancers with children. If you get involved with seeing these poor kids suffering the way they are, you just want to do anything you can to help them. It's such a heart-wrenching thing to watch kids go through what they do. So every nickel that gets raised is going for a terrific cause. So I encourage everybody to get involved.
I'll be in contact, man.
All right, Austin, thanks.
Have a nice ride.
Yeah, thank you for everything. You going to take off that way?
I'm good with you, man.
Yeah, have a nice one.
Yep.
Thank you, man. I want to give a thank you to Mike McIntyre for letting me get a closer look into the Great Cycle Challenge. I would also like to extend a thank you for all the riders who came out and gave me their own thoughts on the GCC, as well as Chloe Walbrook from the Children's Cancer Research Fund. If you would like to get involved with any of these causes or wish to donate to any of the riders seen in this video, the links are right here, as well as the links to the GCC website and Children's Cancer Research Fund. Thank you.